Hi, everybody. Mondial Astral Oracles. We're approaching the end of 2024, and it feels like changes are upon us. It always does, but it also seems like things are changing in the digital realms. And I'd love to also try to work with the stuff, the context, the channeling, the community in different ways. And I think what I'm gradually doing is that I'm kind of shifting to coffee being the primary platform, and there you can keep up with everything I do, and then it'll turn up in different venues and different places where I can share the stuff, and I'll also try to go back and rework some of the stuff and put it into an accessible context, because there's so much of a back catalog there that I feel the need to return to, and I might also get into repeating myself a little. And so a lot of the themes are themes, of course, that I've touched upon or looked into in different contexts. And if you've been with me for a long time, you've kind of probably also noticed this side theme of the tykes, the little ones, that often crop up in relationship to the hybrid program, the Greys, and these strange mischievous beings, but also, of course, in relationship to the natural spirits, the more leprechaunish creatures that inhabit these, let's call them minor or adjacent spirit realms to our own. And they're interesting to work with, but they're hard to understand. They're generally very playful, these little beings, and you find they crop up almost in all folklores, all traditions. There is this story of the little men, and of course, if you've been into Whitley Strieber, for instance, and Red Communion, uh, like the abduction experiences there, as far as I recall them, it's also him being taken to the woods and being in this strange dark cavern that seems almost more like the Hall of the Mountain King, or some place where they would take you, these forest spirits, than aboard some strange alien airship. And of course, they have also since ancient times been connected to floating nights in or lights in the night. So there is something about these creatures that seem to elude our understanding, and that seems to be very pronounced in their gremlin aspect. So this idea that they throw a spanner in the works, they are kind of the ones who also make sure that things are upset, that life has these cracks and crevices and disharmonies that make sure that the grander whole can actually play out. And I think that's interesting when we look into their mythology. I think it's called Jiva, perhaps, that lowly dwarf in Hindu mythology that kind of represents some of the vices and desires in the human spirit. And that's, of course, again, like that sense of the dwarf, which also often in Western traditions represents the darkness, the shadow, and all these aspects are um, that we're not too keen to bring into the light. And then connecting it to, for instance, the elves in Sansa's workshop, right? Because what is it they're doing? Well, they're also producing gifts or objects. They're adding to your material reality, creating things that can somehow keep you engaged in life itself. But they're doing so on the backdrop of the big guy who keeps score of what you've been doing for the past year, right? So the gifts are kind of determined by whether you've been naughty or nice, and that's, I think, fairly hilarious as an image of karma. These small creatures that sort of keep adding and distracting us into the world, and that leads us into this world of good and evil, of morality, of existence, of being engaged with ourselves and our place in it, which, seen on that like symbolic energetic level, you can think of Santa's workshop as that idea, right? You're keeping score, and you're keeping up the Yule, another the wheel, another name for this season. You're keeping it going for another year. So in that sense, the elves are keeping up the cosmic gears. And this is, I think, interesting in relationship to the psychedelic experience, because even though you may have strange creatures turn up in let's say different venues or media psychedelic lenses, it seems that the tykes, the elves, are very connected to dimethyltryptamine in particular. And I've had some experiences this past year where it's that moment where you're taking it in and you're holding it down, and you're kind of getting ready, or you're kind of being taken apart and into the experience. And at that point, it seems like, and to me, it's kind of like a particular little tyke that jumps in and then goes along for the ride with this very playful, kind of zany, and not at all necessarily super pleasant presence. And that's happened a few times, which I think is interesting, because again, it's this contrast between the grand beatific vision, like this experience of you as everything, which the DMT state really opens up, and then the small personification, the thing that's also keeping you here and engaged in the play and in the game. And that's I think a very interesting topic. They are also quite related to teasing. We use the word drilling in Danish. You might see why that could turn into to teasing somebody, like causing them undue pressure, right? So it is that sense that they won't really leave you alone. There you are, and then they come in and they play around and they move around with your stuff, and they're creating obstacles and difficulties for you. And that seems to be a part of the game of life, the role of life, that they're adding to. And that also kind of repeats in their connection to the household, right? The idea that the household, the outer expression of your life and your inner order, somehow needs to be running smoothly, and you need to also make sure that all the small beings that are present in that conscious life and the outer expression of it, that they're honored and they're kept well fed, and have their proper place in everything. And yeah, again, returning and the making looping the present here. Then notice how they seem to be connected to this image of imperfection almost. So it's also where the gods rule. You'll find that these smaller, lesser beings, they also keep up, and now they're part of the entourage. And so the idea, for instance, with the myths surrounding the weapons of the gods in that contest in Norse mythology, where it's these different elves that then um, are to make them, and Loki shows up, and he begins hassling some of them. So, for instance, the chef for Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, it's too short for him to wield properly, and that's like one of that. It's an underscoring of that theme, that when we set out to create perfection, there is this element in reality itself that is also somehow set set apart, diminished, and that is, in the quite natural sense of the word, these small tykes that are somehow shrunken, right? Like they play around with our stuff. So I hope those musings and meanderings on what these beings they might be and why they're interesting, I hope that that kind of served you. And then I thought, for this channeling and to try to get to know them, I think I want to try to channel Loki, and I've never done it, but of course also because he's the one who kind of holds the connection of the gods to these beings of the more demon-like, giant-like realms. So let's see what he has to say. Much love to you out there. It is fear that keeps you walking on one line of the divide or the other, thinking that there is a chasm that you cannot straddle. I have my feet in both worlds, in all of them. I have wandered, I have seen many things. This day I come to you, speaking is the voice of Loki, and I address you this day because there is benefit in it to me as well. You do not honor these beings, and so these beings are free to cause great mischief and trouble in the shadows. These beings, they were once like you. In your childhood, you knew them well. They are, to some extent, a part of you that went another way. And so, after lifetimes in different realms, you have come together. You are joining hands in order to sing a song. You are connecting in order to bring play back into your present purpose. You all know this very well, that this is the effervescent ingredient. This is the secret ingredient in childhood joy that so many of you seem to lose and be unable to retrieve. It's the element of play and pretend. Why so serious? I ask you. Why do you not ask yourself that more often? Why do you not look in to the stern sediments that have allowed to lodge themselves in your forehead? And now, indeed, these emotions, they are as sediments. They are simply sitting there, waiting to be washed away. Stale, but yet not allowing for forces to move through where they are now seated. And so you are to some extent not allowing yourself to see who you really are when you are unable to become challenged, by chaos. And so this force of play, it's truly the force of chaos that comes into your life. And chaos is nothing but the shapeless unknown. And the shapeless unknown holds, as every child knows, great promise. There are a lot more engaging things to be understood in the dark than in the light, where everything seems ordered, separate, and set apart. What are the small steps in the nighttime that you hear when you awake and do not know what time it is? What is the sensation that there are other occupants in your house, maybe even in your life, and that they too wish for it to be delightful? Because joy is delightful. And so the only true delights, they are retrieved from those caverns of chaos, those places that you are afraid to descend into. And you are well aware of this, that the best story to come home with is one where you were frightened out of your mind and you made it home anyway. And the best present to come home with is one you didn't dare to expect and you didn't hope you would ever get. Surprise is the name of the game. Surprise things that were unwanted, unseen, unshapely. They are handed to you to be made useful in a game that you invent. Do you see that there is a workshop somewhere in the ethers which keeps sending you new troubles, new concepts, new insights, new understandings, new emotions to deal with? How you deal with this is a test of your character, your mettle. We could even say that this is what the game of life is about. It's how you apply yourself to these things that are handed to you. The talents passed on to you, not for your safekeeping, but for your investment, for you to use. And know that if you break something, something new will come along. That this workshop, it never struggles with supply. It has infinite opportunities to draw from. It harvests from chaos itself things for you to use and understand. So, as this cycle comes around again, what will you be getting this Yuletide? What are the objects you will use to make the new cycle joyful? Consider this and call on me if you need help translating the mysteries of chaos. I, Loki, I depart. Farewell. I haven't channeled him before. I think I found that enjoyable. I hope you did too. Much love, guys.